Welcome to the Deep Dive. Our mission, well, it's really about cutting through the noise.
Right.
Going beyond just the headlines to find those important nuggets of insight from recent news. We want to give you a shortcut to being genuinely well-informed.
Exactly.
So today we're doing a kind of newscast-style deep dive. We're looking at some pressing global and national stories, all pulled from news items curated by the DGH News and Information Network.
Mm-hmm.
We'll focus on defining moments from today, July 4th, 2025, and the past few days, digging into the details and, the bigger picture.
It's true. Our aim here is to connect those dots for you, helping you understand not just what happened, but, crucially, why it matters. How these things that seem separate actually weave together.
Let's start right here in the U.S. then, because Independence Day, well, it's being marked with some really stark contrasts this year.
Yeah.
You think fireworks, parades, but this July 4th, 2025, it's showing a pretty fractured sense of national unity.
It really is.
We've seen several towns, especially in Southern California, deciding to cancel their usual festivities.
That's right. And the organizers, they've been quite open about it. They're citing this climate of fear, specifically around recent immigration enforcement actions.
Like in El Sereno, that neighborhood in L.A.
Exactly. Their local parade got called off.
Well,
why? Because the vast majority of participants, especially from the Latino communities, they pulled out. Community leaders were clear. They said, look, patriotism is still strong, but the real fear of running into immigration agents has just put a chill on things, on public gatherings, celebrations.
And it's not just cancellations, is it? There are also active protests happening.
Right. Activist groups are using the holiday, leveraging it, you could say, to protest government policies. Like there's a big gathering planned outside Houston City Hall.
Aiming to envision a more inclusive America, I read.
That's the idea. And it presents this interesting paradox, doesn't it? Well, the very act of protesting on this specific national holiday, it sort of affirms the very freedoms that are being contested,
That's a great point. It really highlights a deep tension.
Absolutely. Is this ability to protest openly a sign of a healthy democracy in action? Or does the need for these protests on a day meant for unity signal something more worrying, like an erosion of that shared national identity?
And yet, amidst all this tension and fear, record-breaking travel, AAA is forecasting over 72 million people heading out, traveling 50 miles or more.
It's quite striking, isn't it? It suggests that for a huge number of Americans, the holiday is still, a cherished time for relaxing, connecting with family, maybe even just getting away from these exact tensions for a bit.
Okay, so speaking of government policies, let's shift to the legislative front because there's been a major development.
The big tax and spending bill.
Exactly. Congress pushed it through. A huge win for the current administration, no doubt. And it brings some really significant changes. Things like how poker and sports gambling winnings are taxed. That's going to shake up the gaming world.
For sure. And the other big one, ending federal tax incentives for electric vehicles.
Right. That's bound to have a knock-on effect in the auto market.
And getting it passed wasn't exactly smooth sailing. Remember the House Minority Leader?
Oh, yeah, the marathon speech.
A record breaker. 8 hours and 44 minutes on the floor, trying to delay that final vote. Just laying into the bill.
And some parts are incredibly controversial. Those deep cuts to Medicaid.
Around $1 trillion, the estimates say.
Which is understandably raising huge alarms. Healthcare advocates, people in rural areas worried about their local hospitals closing.
Serious concerns there. And it's not just outside critics. There's internal dissent, too.
You mean at the EPA?
Yeah, the Environmental Protection Agency. Reports say they put, 139 employees on leave?
For protesting the administration's own environmental policies. Arguing they ignore the science, weaken protections.
It just shows how deep these divisions run, even within the government itself.
So this whole legislative package, it's really reshaping huge chunks of the U.S. economy, isn't it? Healthcare, environment, cars, gambling.
It absolutely is. It's a very clear course correction from the administration. Some see it as, bold, necessary fiscal responsibility.
While others see it as a potentially reckless gamble with serious consequences for a lot of people.
Precisely. It raises that fundamental question, necessary correction or dangerous gamble?
And these waves of policy and power, they definitely reach into the media world, too.
Oh, yes.
There was that big settlement, a major media corporation agreeing to pay $16 million to the former president.
Over that controversial TV news segment, right? He was initially seeking, $20 billion?
$20 billion. Claiming mental anguish from an interview they aired with a political opponent.
And the details of the settlement are interesting. The money goes to his future presidential library, his legal bills.
But crucially,
No apology, no admission of wrongdoing from the media company.
which apparently didn't sit well internally.
Not at all. Reports suggest pretty strong opposition from inside the news division itself. Senior leaders, journalists, they were against it.
Didn't the news division CEO resign? And an executive producer.
Both resigned in the months leading up to this settlement being announced, yes.
Yeah.
It really throws that classic conflict into sharp relief, doesn't it? The tension between a corporation's bottom line, its financial interests, and core journalistic principles.
It makes you wonder about the chilling effect, too. Will news outlets be more hesitant now to take on powerful figures?
That's the big question hanging over this, I think.
Okay, let's move away from D.C. for a bit. There are other major stories making headlines, starting with a really significant legal development.
The Idaho student murder case.
Yes. In a move that surprised many, the suspect pleaded guilty.
To the murders of those 4 University of Idaho students, It was a last-minute deal with prosecutors, wasn't it? Just weeks before the trial.
And it takes the death penalty off the table.
Right. The plea happened in this packed courtroom, families of the victims present, bringing a sort of formal end to a case that just horrified everyone, especially that small town, Moscow, Idaho.
It does mean no public trial, though.
Which is a key point. A trial might have brought out more details from that long, complex investigation, the forensics involved. Now, that won't happen publicly. It makes you ask, what factors led the prosecution to accept a plea deal in such a massive case? And can that community, so deeply wounded, really find closure this way?
Meanwhile, turning west to California, another familiar challenge is unfolding.
Wildfires.
A big one, the Madre Fire, they're calling it, moving incredibly fast, aggressively through Southern California.
Already scorched over 35,000 acres. It's the biggest fire in California so far this year.
And conditions are just terrible for fighting it, right? Tinder dry vegetation, erratic winds.
Exactly. It's making containment extremely difficult. Communities are on edge, evacuation warnings are out, and the air quality, well, it's very poor across large areas. Health advisories are in effect.
It just seems relentless.
It underscores this escalating threat, doesn't it? These climate change-fueled fires across the West. It's part of that larger pattern of longer, more intense fire seasons. It really forces us to ask, are our current strategies for prevention, for suppression, are they actually enough to handle this growing crisis?
A critical question. Now let's shift gears slightly from the environment to the entertainment world. A very high-profile trial just wrapped up.
Music mogul, yes.
Acquitted of the most serious charges, sex trafficking, racketeering.
But not everything. The jury found him guilty on some lesser counts after deliberating for, about 12 hours?
Around that, yeah. And he was denied bail, so he's waiting for sentencing on those convictions.
The reaction outside the courthouse was apparently quite something. Supporters celebrating. But the trial itself featured incredibly emotional, often conflicting testimony.
So a mixed verdict.
It suggests the jury, they found some testimony convincing enough for those lesser charges, but clearly had doubts about the more serious accusations. It speaks volumes, I think, about the challenges involved in prosecuting powerful figures, especially in industries like entertainment. Does this verdict undermine accusers? Or does it still represent a form of accountability, even if partial? It's complex.
Okay, let's broaden our view now, turn to some significant international news shaping the geopolitical map. Russia has made a major move regarding Afghanistan. They formally recognized the Taliban
as a legitimate governing authority there. Yeah, that's a big step.
The first country to grant that kind of recognition since the Taliban took Kabul back in 2021. They've even accepted a Taliban ambassador in Moscow.
It's a stark contrast to the stance of the U.S. and its Western allies, isn't it?
Completely. They're still withholding recognition, mainly citing human rights issues, especially the treatment of women and girls, and concerns about terrorism.
So Russia's motives here seem pretty pragmatic, likely focused on strategic interests, promoting stability on their southern flank, maybe combating the drug trade, countering influence from other powers in the region.
It definitely changes the diplomatic landscape around Afghanistan.
It really does, and it raises that difficult question. Does this grant a dangerous legitimacy to a regime with a, frankly, troubling human rights record? Or is it a necessary, maybe unavoidable step towards dealing with the reality of who holds power in Afghanistan right now?
A tough balance. Now, for something a bit unusual, involves international ice, not just waters. An ambitious journey hit a snag at the bottom of the world.
Antarctica. What happened?
A 19-year-old American pilot attempting a solo flight to all 7 continents, he's been detained.
Detained. By who?
By Chilean authorities on an Antarctic island. Apparently, he landed without the proper authorization.
Bureaucracy strikes. Even in Antarctica.
Well, it's more than just bureaucracy down there, isn't it? It's governed by really strict international treaties.
Exactly. Because it's so environmentally sensitive and politically complex, too. You need extensive permissions for almost any travel, especially flights into its airspace.
Yeah.
They're tightly controlled.
So this young pilot seems to have run afoul of those rules.
It's a fascinating little incident, though, because it highlights just how regulated Antarctica is. Was it just, youthful enthusiasm maybe bumping up against red tape? Or does it point to a bigger challenge? How do we manage this rise in adventure tourism in places that are incredibly fragile?
Yeah, that's a good point. Finally, today, we need to pause and acknowledge the passing of 2 notable figures. People who really left their mark, one in global sports, the other on screen.
Sad news.
First, the international soccer world is really reeling. A celebrated 28-year-old Portuguese forward. He and his brother died in a car accident in Spain.
Oh, that's terrible. And wasn't there something particularly tragic about the timing?
It's just heartbreaking. It happened only 2 weeks after he'd married his long-term partner back in Portugal.
Oh, goodness. That's just devastating.
Yeah. He was a key player, for his English Premier League club, for the Portuguese national team. There's just been an outpouring of grief from fans, fellow players, everyone.
It's such a profound tragedy, losing a vibrant young athlete right in his prime. It's a stark reminder, isn't it, of how fragile life is. And it's interesting how the global sports community really does unite in grief over something so personal.
It really does. And we also lost actor Michael Madsen this week. He died at 67.
Mr. Blonde, a truly memorable screen presence.
Definitely. Known for those intense, often chilling roles, especially in Quentin Tarantino's films, Reservoir Dogs, Kill Bill, Bud the Assassin.
He had that distinctive quality. He was found unresponsive at his home in Malibu, suspected cardiac arrest.
His career was huge, though. Over 170 movies, Thelma and Louise, Donnie Brasco, Sin City. He was in so much.
He really was. And, despite playing all those tough guys.
He was a poet.
Yeah. A published poet. It shows a different side, doesn't it? His passing, it marks the loss of someone really unique, powerful on screen. He created some characters you just don't forget, often quite menacing ones.
You really don't. What was it about him, do you think, that made him so captivating for audiences and for directors like Tarantino?
That's a great question. Maybe that simmering intensity, that unpredictability he brought, he leaves behind a very distinct contribution to cinema. He'll definitely be remembered for those iconic roles.
Indeed. Well, that brings us toward the close of this deep dive into the latest news and events.
Been quite a range of stories today.
It certainly has. And before we go, I'd like to remind you that you can listen to the news, weather, and lots more online at dghradio.com. You can also request to join our WhatsApp group, where you get the news, weather, and other insightful information delivered right to your smartphone. To join, text Join DGH WhatsApp group to 1-315-898-4049. Be sure to include your name in the text message. You will receive a call to verify your request. Weather updates can be heard at the bottom of each hour daily, 30 minutes after each hour, and FSN news 15 minutes later on the 45-minute mark. Other news can be heard 4 times daily. From the USVI, it can be heard at 6 a.m., 12 p.m., 6 p.m., and 12 a.m. From the BVI at 7 a.m., 1 p.m., 7 p.m., and 1 a.m. News from the wider Caribbean is reported at 8 a.m., 2 p.m., 8 p.m., and 2 a.m., and the U.S. and world news at 9 a.m., 3 p.m., 9 p.m., and 3 a.m. A historical feature stories come on at 10 a.m., 4 p.m., 10 p.m., and 4 a.m., and Democracy Now! Plays at 11 a.m., 5 p.m., 11 p.m., and 5 a.m., except on weekends when we have other insightful topics. Originally produced Caribbean cultural and Afro-influenced music is played between the various news reports. Thank you for tuning into the DGH News and Information Network.